Well, hey, welcome everybody. We're going to take a look at the Walt Brown controversy written in his own words. So to do that, I'm just going to show you how to get it. And this PDF is up there right now. It may not be there in the future. They might update it. But as for now, I'll share my screen with you. You can go into my screen, go into, let's see, make a screen there. You go into hpt.rsr.org. So hpt.rsr.org. You get into the website and then you can hit the PDF. And then this is Walt Brown's book. And the neat way is you can just type in plagiarism controversy. And you just push Command F, and then you got this, and then you can go right to it. And this is what Walt Brown has to say. This is the plagiarism controversy. This is on page 246, and this is what we'll read. Okay, let's make that a little bigger. Okay, let's get rid of that. Okay, plagiarism is theft, intellectual theft. Anyone is free to read all correspondence and other documents that pertain to this controversy. Others have read, studied, and reported on it. One of the clearest and most comprehensive reports was a radio broadcast, which can be heard at HPT. You can see that there. Basically, it's rsr.org. That'll get you there, and then search controversy. And this is the initial conditions that preceded the Grand Canyon. Okay, so let's take a closer look at this. Alrighty. In 1972, I proposed the hydroplate theory. This is Walt Brown writing. After a year of study and a fieldwork at Arizona, Utah, and Colorado in 1986 to 1987, I located, using geological and topographical features, the boundaries of a large, now extinct lake and named it Grand Lake. Beginning in my fall 1988 seminars in the United States and Canada, and on 16 September 1988 radio broadcast over 200 stations, I described Grand Lake's key features, location, and how its breaching formed the Grand Canyon. This explanation for the Grand Canyon was first published in 1989. Another extinct lake nearby, Hopi Lake, was described earlier by R.B. Scarborough. Dr. Steve Austin of the Institute of Creation Research, ICR, as he eventually admitted in writing, purchased that 1989 fifth edition of In the Beginning in August 1989, weeks after it was published. That's from Steve Austin's personal correspondence on August 29th, 1994. In early 1990, Austin published, as if they were his, essential ideas of mine about Grand Lake and the formation of the Grand Canyon. I learned this on 7 May 1990, but said nothing about it for 3 years. On November 4th, 1990, two people, initials JB and DB, told me that Austin, on the previous day, said in a large public presentation that I took those critical ideas from him. Again, I kept silent. By mid-June 1993, Austin's false allegations against me were spreading to a wide audience connected to ICR and starting to harm others. For example, in September 1992, Dr. Robert V. Gentry filmed me at the Grand Canyon presenting the Grand Lake explanation as part of a professional and expensive video production. Then on June 10th, 1993, Gentry called to tell me that Dr. Russell Humphreys, who had worked closely with Austin and was then at ICR, was reporting that I had plagiarized ideas from Austin's. Humphreys later wrote that he did not use the word plagiarize, but Gentry insisted that was the intended meaning. Gentry told Humphreys that he did not believe that was true, but was naturally concerned about the consequences of those allegations for his film production, so he appealed to me for help. I then realized I had to address the issue. By way of background, the geologists have known since at least 1861 that canyons can be catastrophically carved in weeks by water suddenly released by the breaching of a lake's boundary. The discoveries of J. Harlan Brents in 1923 also showed this to generations of undergraduate geology students. In 1980, Austin and many others saw that a small lake on Mount St. Helens had breached and the escaping water had quickly carved a tiny canyon. In 1985, John H. Whitmore, a student of Austin's, wondered in a term paper if the former Hopi Lake, now a dry lake bed directly east of the Grand Canyon, could have breached the Kaibab Plateau and carved the Grand Canyon. That would have been highly unlikely because, one, the Kaibab Plateau is about 2,000 feet higher than Hopi Lake could have been, and the water would have had to penetrate 30 miles of hard rock that was denser than concrete, and three, any spillage down such a gradual slope to the west would erode little material. In 1986, Dr. Hedman Holroyd told Austin that if a dam were built across the Colorado River near Grand Canyon Village, a vast lake larger than Hopi and Grand Lake, let's see here, larger than Hopi and Grand Lake combined would form. Holroyd drew his hypothetical lake on a map and noted that if a very long east-west fault had then developed between what are now the north and south rims of the Grand Canyon, the lake's escaping waters might have carved the Grand Canyon. However, no one has found such an east-west fault, and faults in the Grand Canyon region are typically perpendicular to the canyon, not parallel. Furthermore, a canyon that eroded along a fault would not bend or meander as the Grand Canyon does. The discoveries of Newberry and Brent's and speculations of Whitmore and Holroyd led Austin to wonder, in a very tentative way in his writing, as his writings show, if the breaching of Hopi Lake directly east of the Grand Canyon had carved the Grand Canyon. Austin probably knew the serious problems mentioned above that faced any proposal that the breaching of Hopi Lake carved the Grand Canyon. What he did not realize, as his writings exposed, was that a much larger and separate post-flood lake, Grand Lake, was north of Hopi Lake. Austin was unable to produce any spoken or written record showing that he knew before my 1988 radio broadcast anything about Grand Lake. However, in 1990, he published a map shockingly similar to the one I had published in 1989, showing, as he labeled it, Grand Lake, and giving its elevation 5,700 feet above sea level, just as I had announced in many forums a year earlier in 1988 and published in 1989, along with the boundaries of Grand Lake and its breach point. When Grand Lake breached, the escaping water also caused breaching of the northwest corner of Hopi Lake. The two very visible breach points define the north and south ends of Marble Canyon and explain many of the unusual characteristics described in this chapter. I call the northern breach point where Grand Lake spilled the funnel. Pictures of it are on pages 222 to 226. The southern breach point where Hopi Lake spilled is marked by the unique terrain where the Little Colorado River enters the Colorado River. The near simultaneous breaching of both lakes carved the Grand Canyon in weeks and upwarped the Kaibab Plateau via the water balloon effect, explained on page 227. The torrent of water then cut down through the rising Kaibab Plateau. This chapter presents 24 other points of evidence that I gathered in 1988 to 1989 that confirmed the Grand Lake explanation. The chapters, The Hydroplate Theory and Overview, pages 111 to 151, Liquefaction, pages 185 to 213, and Limestone, pages 259 to 265, fit together all the pieces of the puzzle. What produced all the sediments, layered the strata, and sorted the fossils? What cemented the rocks so uniformly? Why does the Grand Canyon expose so much limestone? How was limestone produced? What raised the Kaibab Plateau? And how could the Colorado River flow through it? What forces, energy, and mechanisms buckled the Rocky Mountains and lifted the Colorado Plateau so high? The Grand Canyon would not exist if the Colorado Plateau had not first rapidly risen more than a mile above sea level and lifted Grand and Hopi Lakes. Large lakes rarely form at such high elevations, where rainfall is rare and evaporation is rapid. If the Grand Canyon is a consequence of a global flood, where did all the flood water come from? And where did all the dirt and water go? Centuries after the flood, there were Centuries after the flood, was there enough water to transport 2,800 cubic miles of dirt? And where is it today? Attempts to explain the Grand Canyon without first answering these broader questions is incomplete. Of course, any explanation that is not accompanied by definite predictions is weak science. The breach dam explanation requires the hydroplate theory to explain many important details. After pondering Robert Gentry's appeal for me to respond to Humphrey's false allegations, I realized that I needed to go to the source of these spreading the accusations that I stole Austin's ideas. If I had simply been seeking priority, as some have alleged, I would have done so years earlier. So on June 18th, 1989, I wrote Austin explaining the seriousness of the matter and asked if it was true that he had made these accusations against me. The same day, I also wrote ICR's director, Dr. Henry M. Morris, now deceased, to inform him of this issue. In all, Morris and Austin and I exchanged 6 letters during the summer of 1993. Austin always denied that he had accused me of plagiarism, although I explained how he could contact those who heard him and clearly understood what he had said. He never contacted those witnesses. He also denied taking any ideas of mine, although some details he published were so specific that they obviously had come from my work. With each attempt to evade, he created more problems for himself and left his fingerprints. Map makers usually place on their maps tiny, unique details, even intentional errors, so that anyone who copied the map will clearly be shown to be guilty of copyright infringement. Austin tried in several deceptive ways to show that he had come up with the Grand Lake explanation first. They were easily shown to be false, as a reading of all of our correspondence clearly shows. For example, Austin backdated his 1989 guidebook by 1 year, giving it a false 1988 copyright date, obvious based on later dates in those pages and the 1989 date on the guidebook's cover. By 1981, Austin must have realized plagiarism and copyright infringement were shown by his using the name Grand Lake on a map in his guidebook he sold. He then changed his name for the lake to Canyonlands Lake, having 2 names for the gigantic lake responsible for the formation of Grand Canyon will continue to produce confusion and prevent others from going to the source for the evidence and full explanation for Grand Canyon's origin. On August 19th, 1993, I proposed a letter to Morris and Austin, and we put this unpleasant matter in the hands of an independent Christian arbitrator to thoroughly study and resolve, because we were unable to resolve it ourselves. Morris and Austin flatly refused. Denials and bobbing and weaving continued. Finally, after exchanging 13 more letters, I told Morris and Austin if they did not allow this matter to be arbitrated, so it would not create further dissension, confusion, and accusations against my associates and me, I would make the issue public. They reluctantly agreed, but in various ways thwarted all efforts to seek arbitration. For example, after consulting with their lawyer, and only 4 days before the arbitration was to take place, they backed out of their written agreement to arbitrate and announced that they would participate only in non-binding mediation. Arbitration is binding. After months of effort and having finally reached agreement on the time, place, and arbitrator, I felt betrayed. With plane tickets purchased and all the preparations in place, I decided to proceed anyway, hoping mediation would produce an agreement. Mediation occurred on June 21st, 1994. However, by September 28th, 1994, Austin had clearly broken even the agreement we signed at the mediation as a reading of our correspondence will show. I also wrote everyone involved, including Henry Morris and each member of ICR's board of directors, that Austin had broken the agreement. ICR's misinformation is still being spread. Therefore, to answer questions from those hearing this misinformation, the entire matter will be placed on the table for anyone to examine. People can reach their own conclusions. Notice I followed the procedure laid out in Matthew 18, 15 to 17. First, privately speaking to the parties you believe acted wrongly. Second, if he denies the allegations, present one or two witnesses to verify the allegations. Third, if that does not produce change, tell the church. I am now telling the church. The body of believers, anyone wishing to receive a free CD containing all correspondence and writings between Morris, Austin, and me, can simply mail a stamped self-addressed CD mailer containing a blank CD-ROM and case to that address. And I think you could probably even get it. I think some may have asked why Austin and I never worked together. My first attempt let's back up here. Okay, back to the CD-ROM and case to CSC 5612 North 12th Place, Phoenix, Arizona 85016. Okay, and I think this might be available. I think they're all linked in Pastor Lee's summary, executive summary that you can see at rsr.org. I think it links to all the correspondence. You won't even have to mail them. Okay. Some have asked why Austin and I never worked together. My first attempt toward that end was in the summer of 1976. I flew to ICR in San Diego in part to meet Stuart E. Nevins. At the time, I did not know that Austin had been writing under the fictitious name to conceal from evolutionists and the academic community his identity. As a creationist, at lunch with Dr. Morris, I said that I would like to meet Stuart Nevins. Morris, hiding the true situation, simply said that Nevins was out of town. In 1990, I flew to San Diego for a series of meetings with ICR's leadership. In an informal gathering, some asked me to explain the hydroplate theory to the group. I declined, saying that I could not explain it in the brief time available. The group urged me to do so. Again, I declined. Austin then walked in and also urged me to explain it, saying that he knew all the ideas about the flood and would quickly recognize. Again, I declined. Austin then walked in and also urged me to explain it, saying that he knew all the ideas about the flood and would quickly recognize what I had in mind. I began, but completed only a few sentences when Austin interrupted to tell the group a related story. A minute or two later, he excused himself to catch his ride home. Our gathering then dispersed. In March 1981, a friend of Austin's, initials TM, had just attended the first of 200 full-day seminars. The first of 200 full-day seminars I conducted between 1981 and 1999 in the United States and Canada. He called Austin to urge him to learn about the hydroplate theory. Austin's response was simply, "I wish these non-geologists would stay out of our business." Later, I twice related this to Austin, but heard no denial or retraction, only silence and a blank stare. Since 1984, false comments, derogatory letters, and negative innuendos about me have periodically come from ICR. Most recently, some at ICR have written that the hydroplate theory is laughable. The specifics of these comments show the writers have not read the theory. On several occasions, I have offered to debate the scientific merits of our respective understandings of the flood, but ICR always declines. One simple, quick format is explained in What is the Direct Oral and Written Refereed Exchange on page 585. Okay, that might be it. Yeah, that's what he has to write. And they're still not stepping up to the microphone. Let's see. Let me go to the StreamYard. We'll remove this. Okay, I hope you could hear that all right. But yeah, that's the situation. That by the copyright on that book was 2019, so that's 6 years ago. And hopefully the book gets out finally. But yeah, this is available at hpt.rsr.org, and you can download it for free. Walt was not in it to make money. He was in it to, get science, let science advance. He would be nothing would make him happier as if the creation movement would win and he could go play golf. But he has since gone to be with the Lord. And so the fight continues. And I think this is one of the issues that's keeping the hydroplate from being brought into the mainstream or even being recognized in creation organizations. It's a theory that's making accurate predictions. It should be being used, but I think this controversy is keeping it hidden. And so we want to bring it into the daylight. Daylight's the best disinfectant. And so then it can be dealt with, and then science can advance. And they're still not stepping up to the microphone. We've tried to have a HPT, CPT roundtable discussion with the experts, and they've declined repeatedly. And if you want to see some of the emails that have been flying back and forth, I did a talk called Jousting Flood Models. And you can see that at Solidify Your Faith on YouTube. You'll have to search jousting because it's not very readily available. It's hidden in there. Well, you can find it, but it's a lot easier. Just search it. And so you can see some of the emails, and a CPT expert, he says, HPT proponents are part of a satanic assault. And so it's like my response was, if that's the case, well, then step up to the microphone and end this satanic assault once and for all. But he did not do that. So this is what Walt Brown had to say about the controversy. And so it's something that we should know. And hopefully, and also what he also wanted was when people publish their theories, before they get published, they should have a list of predictions that go along with their theory. So then we can keep an idea on, or keep an eye on what they expect to find if their theory is true. And I've asked 2 CPT experts, and one of them said they don't make predictions, and the other one never responded to my emails. So that's where we're at right now. Walt Brown says that scientific revolution seldom occurs if the powerful people, the scientific elite, oppose it. But when a vast number of people realize they've been misled, then a scientific revolution can begin. And he also says to keep in mind, those watching the revolution should keep an eye on who avoids the rational discussions, the scientific debates. And so that's where we're at right now. I do thank you for tuning into this. And I think we're going to read this correspondence between Walt and Steve and ICR and just let you decide. He said, bring it to the church. And so we're bringing it to the church. And this is, again, not to throw mud. This is so people can, get their conscience clean. Everybody makes mistakes, and we aren't going to tar and feather anybody, but might be a necessary domino to fall for science to advance. And so with that, I thank you so much for listening to this, and hopefully our paths will cross in the future. And we just pray that the truth would prevail. Have a blessed day.